Fears of a confrontation between Iran and the United States are growing, and both Russia and China are calling for restraint. Washington now plans to send 1,000 more troops to the Middle East after it blamed Tehran for attacks on oil tankers in the Gulf last week. China has warned against opening what it calls a Pandora's box in the region, and Russia accused the US of trying to provoke a war. Iran denies any involvement in the attacks on the tankers, and its president Hassan Rouhani says it will not wage war against any nation. Well, to discuss all these tensions, I am joined now by Dr. Leslie Vinjamuri, who's the head of the US and the Americas program at Chatham House in London. Welcome to Euronews. Thanks very much for speaking to us. So we've got the US sending 1,000 more troops to the Gulf region on top of the 1,500 it announced last month. What do you make of this? Is this simply saber rattling, or do you think we are seeing some kind of push towards military conflict?
Well, there are two things here. One is why is the United States sending troops? And the second question is, how are they going to be perceived? Now, the stated intentions of the United States government is that it's sending those troops to protect its personnel in the region, that it's purely a security defensive measure, nothing that's meant to be a saber rattling. But of course, the way that will be interpreted in light of the big context here, which of course is the U.S. withdrawal, the unilateral withdrawal from the Iran deal, the U.S. sending those troops is inevitably going to be seen by Iran and other powers in the region as being quite an offensive move, and it will increase the insecurity of the region. What we're seeing here is a very dangerous set of responses that risk a very significant escalation. So I think there's a great deal of pressure on Europe, and there's a great deal of pressure on Iran and the United States to manage the situation very carefully.
As you say, a lot of pressure all around, the US putting pressure on Iran putting pressure on Europe, saying that it could soon breach the terms of the nuclear deal if Europe doesn't do anything more to help Iran overcome these sanctions that have been imposed by the US. What do you think could happen if Iran does breach the nuclear deal? Where does that leave Europe? What can Europe do to save it?
Yeah, and Europe is in a very difficult position here. It's been difficult ever since the U.S. Withdrew from the Iran deal. Europe, of course, has a very strong interest in keeping Iran in that deal and keeping that deal alive. But if Iran proceeds to increase its stockpiles of enriched uranium in a meaningful way, then Europe will be in a very difficult position, because by the terms of the deal, it will be required to snap back with those sanctions. So it's very difficult to tell at this point whether what Iran's intentions are, whether they intend to push Europe to the brink, or whether this is just a measure to try and push the Americans and to push the Europeans into a position which is much more in line with the original deal.
Indeed, a very difficult situation there. Dr. Leslie Vinjamuri, really good to get your insight. Thank you very much for talking to us here at Euronews.